Thanks for joining us for another edition of Real Estate Roundtable. I'm Rob Moore with Ecofine Properties, and I'm joined today by Jeff Lichtenstein, owner of Ecofine Properties, and Ross Komarinetz of Brightway Insurance of Juno Beach.
Nice.
I got the last name right. I was just right before we got on here. I said, Ross, I can't pronounce your last name. What is it? So I got it. I nailed it.
Can you pronounce the hurricane that's out there right now?
There's a hurricane called Isaias. Oh, you did it to me. Isaias. Izzy. I don't know. Well, yeah, well, for Izzy for short. So
yeah, Izzy. Ross and Izzy, basically.
So Ross, thanks for joining us. And Jeff, let's go ahead, take it away. Let's find out a little bit more from Ross.
Yeah. So we're in hurricane season. We're in pandemic. I don't know however like the time that's going on, and it gets down when you're in this time of the year. We were just talking a little bit earlier about what happens in a contract when you can't get insurance. So what happens with you when we're going through a hurricane, first of all? And for those of you who are in a bubble, we were supposed to have a tropical storm. Tropical storm kind of became a bigger tropical storm, and then it became a light hurricane, and then I hear a 1 or a 2, and all of a sudden there's us in that little yellow area. So we're in the cone, and when we're in the cone, we can't get insurance. So what does that mean? What happens in your world when someone's trying to get insurance right now?
Right now, we do have a couple carriers that are still writing as of this morning. But yesterday, most of the carriers started putting on a moratorium on either accepting new business or even really making any changes to an existing policy. But if you have a closing that was supposed to be coming up like Monday or Tuesday or something like that, hopefully you're the lender, or if you've got a mortgage or something like that, that they've already sent out the request for insurance and asked for it to be bound already. So if we bound the policy earlier in the week for effective whenever the hurricane is supposed to hit, that'll still be effective. But the issue right now is binding policies today, whether they're going to be effective a month from now or over the weekend or early next week. We just can't really write new policies right now.
So is it when a storm? Is it what happens when a storm is named typically, or when it's in a cone? Like, why are some carriers writing and some aren't?
Well, I mean, typically when it does become a named storm and then we are in the cone, it's usually about 3 days out is when those carriers start to get a little anxious and put some moratoriums on binding restrictions and things like that. But if it's just prior to it becoming a named storm, it's just kind of something that everybody's watching, and that typically doesn't affect any binding restrictions.
Right. And then we talked in the real estate contract, you've got up to there's 7 days when you're in the cone, and then you can, as long as it doesn't continue on for 30 days, that you can still, the contract, the force majeure clause really protects both the buyer and seller for that. And that was we just interviewed Jim Chiaffi on that, so that was
that's interesting.
Good segment on that. So what pieces, like if it's only a tropical storm and there's some water damage, does flood insurance cover that, or what happens if it's just a tropical storm?
So water damage, flood insurance. The way I like to kind of easily explain flood insurance is flood insurance. That would result in damage from water entering your home at the ground level. So if your roof gets ripped off and it rains inside your house and you have 2 feet of water inside your house because your roof got ripped off, that's going to be your homeowner's insurance policy. If if you're standing at your front door and you're watching the street turn into a big puddle, and then all of a sudden that puddle starts coming up your driveway, and then next thing you know, you're standing in a foot of water inside your house, that's going to be flood insurance.
And what percentage of people have flood insurance?
I would say probably about 25 to 30% of my customers that aren't required to have it get it. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the best thing to have because it's not terribly expensive. And if you look at, that's what's happened in recent hurricane storms, like in New Jersey, for example, or even Houston. I think when they had that storm that just hovered there forever, but it wasn't, in parts of it, it wasn't a hurricane. That's where you could suffer just, giant damage and not have any coverage.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're not required to have it, and you're not in a high risk flood zone, the most you'll pay is $516 for the year. And
now, if you want flood insurance right now, do you have to? Do you have to do that is it like a month in advance period?
So if we get an NFIP, a National Flood Insurance Program policy that's underwritten by FEMA, that always requires a 30-day wait from the time that we take payment. So if we took payment from somebody today and bound the policy, it wouldn't be effective till August 31st. We do have some private carriers that offer flood insurance through the private markets. And sometimes that has as little as a 3-day wait, but most of the time like a 7-day wait.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
So is it, like right now, would that close probably?
We wouldn't. They wouldn't issue a flood policy because there probably is a flood warning or a tropical storm watch or a flood watch. So they wouldn't issue if we tried to make it effective within that time frame that the storm would hit. Even if it became effective, because it was bound when there was a flood watch, there would be no coverage.
Got it. Okay, that's a really good explanation. What are other deductibles that someone can have in insurance? Thinking about, what happens if somebody has, sometimes they'll say, well, I have film on my house, which I assume doesn't mean much, but if they have metal shutters versus accordion shutters, versus impact glass, are there differences in type of hurricane protection that makes a difference?
No, I mean, as long as it's Miami-Dade rated, you can put, if it's impact glass or if you've got metal shutters that you put up or accordions that you close, there's no difference in the discount as long as the the protection is Miami-Dade rated.
And then was Miami-Dade, was the name of that because of what happened in Andrew? Is that where that came from?
Yeah, that's typically where it comes from, yeah.
And then how about for other areas, like if age of the roof or how the roof is put together, does that matter?
The age of the roof will definitely play into as far as premium goes. A tile roof is going to probably hold up a little bit better in a hurricane versus a shingle roof. Shingles can kind of fly off with those high winds. A metal roof is that's becoming more popular. Those are probably a little bit more durable, I'd say.
And is there any way that it's constructed? Do you have to do a test to determine that when somebody's buying a home, or that they can do right now if they're going to get a discount on, as far as the roof goes?
There's what's called the wind mitigation report. And the wind mitigation report is an inspection where the inspector goes up into the attic and he looks at how the roof is put on, the type of plywood that is the roof deck, and one of the things that they also look at is if there are hurricane shutters or any opening protection, whether it's impact glass or metal shutters or accordions. And what that does is that allows you to qualify for discounts on the wind portion of the premium. And if you don't have one and you've never heard of it, contact your insurance agent to see if you have one, because it just blows my mind when people say, oh, it would fail a wind mitigation report. There's no pass or fail. You always want to get one done because you're going to get some sort of discount. Very, very rarely do we ever see a wind mitigation report that does not have any discount.
And what kind of, what would be an average of how much you would save? Let's just say on a 3,000 square foot home.
It's usually, if you don't do a wind mitigation report and I sent you a quote that has that, we always quote with what we normally see on the reports. We're not aggressive. We don't quote with hurricane shutters until we actually see it on the report. But basically, it's about double.
Wow. What is the difference between, how about CBS and frame? What is that? How much more will that cost somebody?
That's a tough one, just because while it is a little bit more expensive for a frame house for insurance wise, typically the cost to rebuild a frame house is a little bit less. So it kind of offsets that premium, I guess. So instead of insuring the house for like 500, maybe you're insuring it for 450. And so maybe the premiums kind of work out. But on an apples to apples basis, it's probably about a 20%, somewhere around there maybe.
Is there any difference in what a condo owner should do, to prepare for a hurricane versus, or to have insurance versus a homeowner?
Well, the condo policy, the association is going to cover the exterior of the structure. So if if the building just blows down, the association is going to rebuild that building in a shell, and then the condo owner is going to be responsible for finishing the interior of the shell, and that's where their insurance would kick in. For a homeowner, they're responsible for the entire structure, so there's more coverage there. But as far as like preparedness, you just want to button up and make sure that you kind of mitigate any water intrusion or any wind intrusion that might happen.
Is there anything that you've seen, since we've been in the whole the virus area, of different types of insurance that people have gotten? Any trends?
We are seeing a lot of people trying to save money, just because of everybody being out of work and things like that. However, it's this last probably year and a half, we've seen so many changes and rate increases. And, I was just looking at a report the other day, 34 carriers have filed and or took rate increases over the last 12 months.
How many carriers are there in the state of Florida?
There's a ton of, I don't know the exact number, but even if there might be a ton of carriers that still have policies, but maybe they're not writing new business. And who's writing new business changes on a daily basis. We've had 22 carriers over the past 12 months either close for new business across the state or in specific counties. So it's really becoming a hard market right now.
Yeah, well, I think people don't understand. People they'll have insurance up north, and they like their insurance that they've been getting for 20 years or whatever, and they come here and they can't, and they're not writing business, so they can't use that same carrier.
Yeah, and I talk to people that are moving from like Tennessee, and they're paying $400 a year on a 5,000 square foot house, and then they come down here and they want to buy like a $1,500, $2,000 square foot house, and the insurance is $3,000, and they don't, they're sticker shock. It's such a different animal down here.
Why is insurance? And it matters where you are in the county, but why is insurance more expensive in Florida, and why are carriers in and out all the time?
Florida, the biggest thing is we do have those pesky hurricanes that show up between June and December. And between Irma and Michael, there have been, I think it's probably $27 billion in property losses or something like that. So the insurance, even though people on the east coast of Florida that weren't really affected by Irma or Michael, insurance is the spreading of risk. So the insurance companies paid out $27 billion in damages, and they're just going to spread that risk across their whole book of business rather than just jacking up the rates for those specific people. And so and then also Florida, especially South Florida and the Orlando area and Tampa, it's riddled with fraud. In water damage claims. And one of the biggest things was the assignment of benefits. And that was where if you had a claim, you could just sign your claim over to a contractor, and then he can, contractors get paid on the amount of work that they do. So they would just inflate the claim, and then everybody would get a new kitchen just for having a little bit of water damage. And so what you're seeing now too is so many carriers implementing water damage restrictions. They're limiting how much water damage coverage comes on policies.
When did that start to happen?
Probably about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we started seeing a couple carriers maybe doing limited water damage, and then it almost became across the board, anything over 40 years. All the carriers would have limited water. In South Florida, would have anything over 40 years old would have only come with 10,000 of water damage. But we still do have some carriers that are offering full water damage on older homes, but it's getting smaller and smaller.
Water damage is just giant. You know, we've seen different areas where, homes are just, we had a closing this was a couple years ago, and the day at the walkthrough, we get to the house and the water up from the upstairs let loose, and everything was damaged, and had to redo the whole house. Thankfully there's insurance on that, but that can be just a giant number.
Yeah, and depending on what the damage is, that can get really big. And a lot of carriers are really picky on the age of the hot water heater, because that's one of those things that will just go, and that causes a lot of damage. Especially you could be at work one day, you're gone from 9 to 5, and that water heater explodes at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's just running water for 3 hours, and you have no idea until you come home and all your stuff is just ruined.
We have a tankless water here. Is that looked upon more favorably, or
absolutely? Really? Yeah, there's no real.
Why is that?
Just because it's tankless, so there's no. It's not going to explode. While the traditional 40-gallon water heater is holding 40 gallons of water, and when that goes down, it's still pumping it in. And so when that thing goes, it just keeps pumping water out.
How much can you save by having a tankless water heater?
You don't save any money on the insurance. You just don't have to replace it every 15 years.
Right. And if you have somebody in the house who takes long showers, you don't have to.
Yeah.
you get your, it's a great thing, and saves a lot of space. Is there anything else in the state that you like that's not covered? Are sinkholes covered?
Sinkholes are, you can get sinkhole coverage. Policies used to automatically come with sinkhole coverage up until probably, I don't know, maybe somewhere around 7 to 10 years ago, they automatically came with sinkhole coverage. But there were public adjusters canvassing neighborhoods more in the central part of Florida and saying, hey, you have a crack in your driveway. How would you like to file against the sinkhole portion of your policy and get a bunch of money and pay off your house?
Another new kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. And so the carriers stopped automatically offering that coverage, and because the sinkhole coverage, the way it's defined by the Florida statute, is very broad. So what they started offering is what's called catastrophic ground cover collapse, which comes on every policy. And you basically have to meet 4 criteria. But basically, if a hole opens up underneath your house, you're covered at your all other peril deductible. But if you can't sleep at night without having sinkhole coverage, we can get it for you. It's not that expensive. However, the deductible is 10% of your dwelling coverage. So if you have a $300,000 house and you have a sinkhole open up, your deductible is 30 grand. As opposed to if you just went with your catastrophic ground cover collapse coverage, it's your all other peril deductible.
I have a nightmare having sinkhole coverage and paying that premium. But I don't is there much in the south part of the state with sinkholes?
Not here. The sinkholes typically are opening up in the center of the state, because we have that kind of natural river that runs underneath the center of the state, and that eats away some of that soil, and it erodes, and next thing you know,
it's like every 10 years you read about poor Irving, it's like 100 feet below sleeping.
Yeah.
What any other coverages that people, other than flood insurance, that people really should have or should be aware of?
You know what? There's actually kind of a cool product out there. We've written a few policies for it, but you can actually insure your hurricane deductible. So if you have a $15,000 hurricane deductible, you can buy a policy that if you do have a claim, if you have any wind claim, you file it against that one, and it'll pay the first $15,000. And so essentially you have a $0 deductible. You're paying like $400 for this policy, but it'll pay out at $1 versus your homeowner's policy, which doesn't pay out until $15,000. That makes sense?
Right.
We kind of call it like gap coverage, basically.
Okay. And then what other insurances do you guys do besides homeowners?
We do everything but health. So we do life, we do commercial, we do auto, motors, all your toys, boats, motorcycles, golf carts, homeowners, just anything property and casualty.
Rob, you have any questions?
No, I know I met with Ross months ago. I have to get back meeting with him again. I just got a hurricane-proof windows and a door, so I'll probably see a deduction in my what I'm paying, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're just going to want to get a new wind mitigation report, so it would be reflected on that, and then we can put some quotes together.
If you do some of the windows, but not all of the windows with hurricane, do you get some credit for that, or do you have to do the whole thing?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, it's an all or nothing credit. Even if all of your windows, all your front doors, all your entry doors are, you know, impact rated or protected by a hurricane rated device, if you have, you know, some sort of either on your garage door has, you know, some of those kind of pretty windows on garage doors, if those aren't impact rated, then you don't get, and you get zero credit. Or if you've got some like a skylight that isn't impact rated, but you've got, you know, protection against everything else, unfortunately, there's no discount.
Interesting. Yeah, so I'll be back to see you soon.
Well, so everybody out there needs your number, and so does Rob. So can you
we get in
give
touch
us your contact information?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you have any questions and you want to give us a call for a quote, the number is 561-425-6228. Just give us a call and we'll send you some quotes.
Ross, can you give your you know, just a brief, you know, background on yourself and about your company too?
I actually came from an Allstate background. I worked at an Allstate about 15 years ago, and did pretty good. Just kind of liked the business, and I don't know, just it was something for me. I kind of dug it and just struck out on our own and opened an independent agency through Brightway, and you know, 10 years later, here we are.
And what's the advantage that Brightway has over an Allstate or someone like that?
We've got access to every carrier in Florida. So, you know, we can find a home for it. We've got the greatest customer service. We've got a whole call center in Jacksonville that's just dedicated to customer service. So if there's anything that you need, you give us a call. We're going to, you know, we'll handle it in our office if we can, but if it's something that our customer service department will handle, they'll get to you. They'll get you all your documents. You know, each Brightway is different. We do things differently than, you know, just like any other business. We're all independently owned and run by different people. But one of the things that we kind of realized early on is that, you know, even though we're in the insurance business, we're actually in the customer service business. So that's kind of what we focus on, and making sure that our customers, whether you're a customer of mine now or a potential customer, or you don't even become my customer, I'm going to try and, you know, give you the best advice and tell you what to do. And, you know, I'll even tell you to call your current agent and tell them to do this, because it'll help you save some money.
Yeah, Ross is terrific and gets to you right away. So it's been a pleasure to work with on our. That's all I have. Rob, any other questions?
The only last thing, Ross, if I remember correctly, you are a Seminole, is a Florida State Seminole fan?
I am, yeah.
So if there is a college football season this year, my Notre Dame Fighting Irish will be taking you on. So
that's right. Welcome to the ACC officially.
That should be a good matchup. So that's
yeah.
But no Gators.
Hey, Rob, have you bought a cutout of yourself for the?
I haven't. I've thought we. You know, it's funny you say that. Me and Millie have talked about that. She said, really? I'm like, yeah, really. I'm like, you know, if it's not too much, I could get myself putting, like, you know, the link in Philadelphia. It'd be awesome. I don't know. We'll see.
Are you going to do an Eagles one?
That's what I'd like to do. Yeah.
That's what I'd like to do.
We'll see. Hopefully we get rid of this pandemic soon. So.
Yeah, I think they should just go, like, the NFL should go to Tokyo, and, like, where they have the Olympic Village. There's no Olympic Village, and just go there and play all their games there. They bubble up and yeah, because the Marlins, there's like 17 players.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
That's a nightmare.
They aren't very good, so they're just going to forfeit. And Buffalo has a team.
Yeah, the
Buffalo Blue Jays.
Buffalo Blue Jays. How about it? Well, I think that does it for us today. Ross, thanks so much for joining us. Jeff, as always. And that does it for another edition of Real Estate Roundtable. Have a great day, everyone.